Okay, Rabbi. So good evening. We're going to talk tonight. We're finished now. The two first books of the Chumash. We finished Bereshit. We finished Shemot. So now we're going to go to Vaikra. Right? Vaikra is Leviticus. Leviticus is one of the most, I guess you could say, right, technical parts of the Chumash. What does that mean? All laws about sacrifices and Kohanim and the priests and the Levites and all these things, right? Which are a little bit more dry, a little bit more dry information. So the truth is that people are not so attracted to this kind of stuff. They kind of like try to shy away from that because it doesn't sound to them so attractive. So it doesn't have that, that charm, the personal charm. But so in order to alleviate this problem, what we're going to do is like this, right? We're going to go through it very quickly. We're not going to get involved with the technical details because it's not practical. We're not bringing the sacrifices today. But we're going to talk more about, the spiritual elements of these things, what they mean and what they're for and what their purpose is and, underlying issues that are there regarding these sacrifices. So the truth is, it's going to be very interesting to hear these things because there's a lot to learn from there. Also, some moral lessons as well. Try to make it as best we can. Okay, so starting out, right? It starts out right away. The reason why this is linked to what we talked about before, because before in the former lectures we talked about the issue of building the Mishkan. So once they built the Mishkan in the desert, in the Midbar, so now they had to offer sacrifices. So they had to learn about the laws of sacrifices. This was the natural, order of events that has to be done. So once you right build it, now you gotta know what to do there. You gotta know what to do, how to do your job. So therefore, right now comes the Torah and teaches us the various types of sacrifices that are offered in the Mishkan, which was the portable temple that they had in the desert, and also regarding the Beit HaMikdash itself, right, the temples that we had. The same offerings were pretty much done over there, more or less, right, same idea. So the way it worked is like this, right. First of all, the interesting thing is, right, that we know that Aaron, right, was the Kohen. He was the one who was chosen to be the Kohen. He was the one. What does that mean? His family, and his descendants are the ones who bring the sacrifices. Only they're allowed to do that, by the way. Nobody else can touch this job. Anybody else goes in there, we give it to him. We punish him very severely for that.
Can't apply.
Right? You know what I mean? So you can't just go in there and say, I'm a holy man. This. I'm a Admor. I'm a Baba. Whatever. Something like that. No, they don't care what you are. Doesn't matter what you are. This job is not for you. It's only for the Kohanim. It's only for the descendants of Aaron. You know what I mean? I'm sorry? Okay, good. Okay. So that's the first thing a person has to know. So what does that mean? Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he was the brother of Aaron, he's not a part of this ritual. He's not a part of this. But the truth is, right, the first week of the inauguration of the Mishkan, he actually was also bringing sacrifices, Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he wasn't a Kohen.
How did Aaron become a Kohen?
Oh, it's a whole discussion in itself, right? They say that the reason Aaron became a Kohen was because Moshe Rabbeinu forfeited this job. You know what I mean? In other words, Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give him to Moshe Rabbeinu everything, but since he was being such a stubborn guy and refusing to take the job, so Hashem told him, "Listen, you're giving me a big headache, with your refusals. So you know what? I'm going to take a part of the job away from you, give it to your brother, since you think you're such a Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want. He was refusing. So Hashem said, "Okay, fine. You refuse. Your brother's going to get your job." This was a punishment, actually, right? This was he got fined for this. Whatever. So Aaron got the job instead of Moshe. So what does that mean? That Moshe's children, he had two sons, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Gershon and Eliezer. They were not Kohanim. They were Levim, right? They're Levites. But the sons of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, right, Elazar, Itamar, they're all Kohanim. Right? This is the way it works. Same family, but two different designations altogether. Right? One not the same as the other. So once Aaron got the job, that was after the first week, right? But during the first week of the inauguration of the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu was also offering sacrifices. This was something very special that the first week got to offer as well. You know what I mean? So this was a one-time deal. Once this week is over, that's it. He's out of there, right? He has no business over there. That's the way it is. He's now only coming as an advisor. What does that mean, advisor? He tells them, this is the rule for that. This is the laws for that. He's the lawgiver. Moshe Rabbeinu was the rabbi, the lawgiver. So he's telling them how to do, what to do, advising them, right? Teaching them, instructing them. Yes, but when it comes to actually the actual offering, no business with that. After the first week, that's it. No more. Chazal tells us, by the way, in the Zohar Kadosh, something very profound about this, right? This is not just a coincidence that there's three different designations in Israel, right? We have Kohen, we have Levi, and we have Israel, right? We have Israel. So the reason says the Zohar Kadosh that the Leviim and the Kohanim are from the same tribe, from Levi, but they have two different designations. One is higher than the other. Kohen is higher than a Levi. So the question is why? What's what's the difference between one and the other? Why would one have more holiness or status than the other? He's my cousin, and for some reason my cousin is better than me. I don't know why. We come from the same family. We have one forefather. So what kind of thing is this? Discrimination. What kind of thing is this? Right? Favoritism. All kinds of things like this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what is this business? So it says Zohar Kadosh. This is not just a coincidence, this thing. You know why? Because the Leviim, their quality, even though they're more holy than the other Jews, they have more holiness than the tribe of Levi is the most holiest tribe of the Jewish people. That's the way it is, by nature. Why is that? Because they're the ones who refuse to do Avodah Zarah. When the Jews did Avodah Zarah in the desert, idolatry, they never participated in that. You know what I mean? All the Levites, including the Kohanim, right? They never participated in any of these things. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, since you are loyal to me, you don't go for that nonsense, this, that, all kinds of Avodah Zarah. Not only that, right, they were the ones who punished these people who did Avodah Zarah. They're the ones who came and killed them also, the ones who were liable to death. They were the ones who killed them, even though they were their relatives, right? Can you imagine? Comes a Levi, and his uncle is not a Levi, but he's his uncle. He killed his uncle, because he was liable to death. Comes the nephew and kills the uncle. Can you imagine? This was the way it was. Or comes, this guy kills his cousin. This is my cousin, but I killed him because he served idols. This is the way it was. So Kadosh Baruch Hu rewarded them because they were loyal to him. But what happened was, nevertheless, the Kohanim are superior to the Leviim. Why? What's the superiority? So it says Zohar Kadosh, the superiority is one thing only, basically, right? The Kohanim, their quality is quality of chesed, of kindness, and the Leviim, their quality is din, right? Judgment. So in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, kindness is better than judgment. This is the way it is. What does that mean? The HaKadosh Baruch Hu prefers the quality of kindness to the quality of judgment. Even though you need both of them in the world, you can't live without either one. If you don't have a combination of both, you can't live in the world. The world cannot exist. Without din, without judgment, there's no world. It's going to be like a total, hooliganism, anarchy. It cannot be like that. You have to have judgment, right? If you don't have that, right? So, you know what it says, right, regarding that, the Chazal. They say that if there was no judgment in the world, each person would come and swallow his neighbor, They would eat him alive. Cannibalism, They would eat people. They would eat their neighbor. That's what would happen. They would shoot him, for a quarter they'll shoot you. You know what I mean? Because you don't give him a quarter, or you came out of the car, you said some bad words to him, said some 4-letter words, he'll come and shoot you, pach. That's what they do. If it wasn't for the fact that they're afraid of the police, they would swallow each other alive. That's what it says, right? So therefore, say the Chazal, because of this problem that if there was anarchy, right? People would swallow each other alive. This is why a person has to pray for the government, right? They should not fail. They should not fall. Right? The government should be strong and do their job. Because if there's no justice, it'll be anarchy. It's a total, Wild West. You know what I mean? What is a Wild West? You shoot one, the other one shoots this guy, then shoots the other guy, right? Goes back and forth like that. So you can understand. So the meter of the judgment is also very necessary in the world, but kindness is better. So the Kohanim have this quality of kindness, This is the difference between one and the other. So therefore, since they have the quality of kindness, they're superior, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says they're first. They go first. For me, they're better. Interesting, by the way, that what's the job of the Kohanim and what's the job of the Levim, right? The Kohanim have to bring the sacrifices. That's their main job there in the Bet HaMikdash, in the Mishkan, in the temple. The Leviim, on the other hand, right, are doing other jobs in the temple, not bringing the sacrifices, but other jobs, yes, they're doing, right? One of the most interesting things that they do over there, is that they play music. They're the musicians. So question is like this, right? I ask you now, right? Why does the Levi have to play music? He's the one who has to be the musician over there. They say, by the way, that the music of the Bet Hamikdash was the most beautiful thing that there ever was. There was no music like that. You know what I mean? They were so skilled. The musicians over there. Everything you forget. You know what I mean? Ayomi, Blackmore. Forget about all this stuff. You know what I mean? Can you imagine? He was even better than these guys. You know what I mean? The guys from the '70s. Those guys. You know what I mean? Those guys who are like yeah. Can you imagine? Right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the musicianship. You know what I mean? Yeah. The quality of the music. The genius. You know what I mean? The genius was some different level. But the Levites were even greater than that. So you see from there, by the way, that says the Maharal Prague, one of the great rabbis of Europe, in Hungary, right? He says that the quality of judgment and music is connected with one with the other. You understand? That's why the Levites had to do it, because music has the quality of judgment. It's not the quality of chesed. Music. You understand? So what does that mean? That when the judgment is good in the world, so the music is also good and righteous, But when the judgment is corrupted, when you have like these courts that we have some of these countries, these banana republics. You know what I mean? You go into the court, or there's like people like Comey and these guys, right? Whatever, these gangsters over there, right? McCabe and these guys, the gangsters. They're the ones who are doing judgment. People like this, you know what I mean? They're the ones who are judging people. These Mullers people, these gangsters that he had on his big group there, right? Gangsters, bunch of gangsters. These people are the ones who are doing judgment. So the judgment is corrupted. You know what I mean? So because of that, the music is also corrupted. What does that mean? The music is dirty. It's like dirty music. It's not clean. It's not pure. And this is the problem, by the way, that we have today. The problem is the reason why the music is so corrupted. What do I mean by corrupted? I'm not talking about the quality. Quality is also bad. That's also true. But what I'm saying is that besides that, we're talking about the quality, the spiritual quality. It's all like dirty, filthy. You're right. Everything, it's like very animalistic, very filthy. Why is it like that? Because the judgment is also bad. So this goes in conjunction one with the other. Can you imagine?
Mark doesn't know you're an ex. Why
X? He doesn't mean X. You know what he means? He means axe. I'm an axe. That's what he means. Okay. He's talking about axe. Okay. You know what they call the guitar? They call it the axe. That's what they call it, right? That's what
You still have the Ivanhoe, right?
Sold it. Okay. So anyway, Rabotai, getting back to what we said, the Leviim had this quality, but the Kohanim were superior. The quality of Chesed. So what does that mean? We need somebody who has a quality of kindness to give you atonement, because the sacrifices were for atonement. That's what it was for. That a person does sins. We do sins all the time, every day. There's, as the wisest of all men said, Shlomo HaMelech, right? There is no man that does not sin. Everybody sins. You know what I mean? So we all need atonement. So how was the best way to get atonement? Do the sacrifices. So just to make a rundown, right, regarding the sacrifices, how it was done. Basically, there was two types of sacrifice, two categories, right? Two main categories. There's the communal sacrifices, communal for the whole community, for the whole country, and also there's the private sacrifices for the individuals. You know what I mean? So the communal sacrifices was basically every day there was brought two, right, korbanot. This is the sacrifice, which is one is brought in the morning, one is brought in the afternoon, right, before the evening, and this atones for all the sins of the whole country. Can you imagine? In a general way, it atones for all these things which people don't know about, or they didn't realize, or whatever, things which were overlooked. You know how it is, right? Sins are overlooked also. A person sometimes doesn't even know that he sinned. He doesn't even think about it. He's not cognizant of what happened, So these sacrifices that they did twice a day, right? It was called the tamid, right? Olat tamid. This was for the whole. So they say that they used to offer two a day. This would atone for all the sins in general of all the Jewish people. Can you imagine? So this was making life a lot easier. Why? Because now you don't have to be punished every day. You don't have to have all these kinds of judgments and all kinds of nasty things going on. You know what I mean?
After 4 o'clock.
Can you imagine? There was one in the morning also. So it atoned for everything. The whole day was done, was dealt with, basically. So this was a communal. There was also other communal sacrifices that they used to do. On Shabbat also, by the way, they did the sacrifices. So what does that mean? Now the interesting thing is, right, that these sacrifices, even though they involve bringing a fire, right, but there it's allowed to do that. Can you imagine? On Shabbat they used to do it with a fire, right? So what's the idea? That if a Kadosh Baruch Hu tells you, listen, you have to bring the sacrifice on Shabbat, that means you have to do it with the fire as well.
But
That's
if
the way it
fire
is.
was burning before, it's okay.
You're still increasing, right? Doesn't make any difference if it was burning before. The fact that you increase, it's a new fire. You know what I mean? In other words, you took from an existing fire, and now you took it somewhere else, right? You moved it on to some. That's a new fire. So basically, right, in the Bet HaMikdash, there was fire going on Shabbat as well. But what are we talking about? We're talking about only things which you're commanded to do on Shabbat. But things which were not commanded on Shabbat, what does that mean? Like, for instance, we're talking about the private offerings, like let's say the person brings for his own sins. So that you're not allowed to bring on Shabbat. You know why? Because you were not commanded to bring this on Shabbat. You were commanded to bring it sometime, whatever. Or you want to bring it as an offering, as a free will. It's just you want to donative, something which you're not obligated to do. But you want to do it as a good deed, to atone for yourself. So things like this.
What was the offering? The offering was a sheep.
We're gonna go through it. We're gonna go through the whole gamut, right?
And do they get
So-
eating it?
So the way, there was also eating, right? There was eating involved as well. So the way it went is like this, right? That they had basically several types of sacrifices that they did. Several categories, right? The first one was olah. What is the olah? The olah consisted basically of several different animals. We're talking about either an ox, right, or a sheep, or a goat, or even a bird, right? There was also a bird, not a chicken, right? Chickens are never offered on the Bet HaMikdash. No chickens. Why is that, by the way? Why? Do you know why that is? You want to know something interesting?
Why was it yellow?
Chicken is a kosher bird, no? We eat it, no?
Could be kosher.
So yeah. So then, what's the problem? So the problem is, I'm just telling you something a little bit.
So bad to
Right.
kill it.
You know what it is? Because the chicken is a very mezaneh. You know what that means? They tend to be very promiscuous when it comes to reproduction. They don't have like a mate that they stick with. Husband, wife. This is my husband. They go like all over. They're all over the place. You know what I mean? So they're not exactly they're not exclusive. They have open marriages. You know what I mean? It's an open marriage. That's the idea, right? So this is, I guess, one of the reasons why. That's the idea, right? So there are only two birds that are brought in the Bet HaMikdash as sacrifices. You know what they are? We're talking about the dove and the turtle dove. Right? Now, the dove that we're talking about, you know what we're talking about? We're talking about the pigeons that are hanging on the street. Those guys, yeah. That's the one they were bringing. Can you imagine?
But there are
A
doves.
pigeon.
But there are doves around.
Right, yeah, that's a different thing. But we're talking about those pigeons. Those pigeons were brought in the Bet HaMikdash. The ones that you find in the street.
Flying rats.
Are they kosher? Yes, they're kosher.
Are they?
Pigeons, yeah. Pigeons are kosher. Right? That was one. And I'll explain to you, by the way, why that is. Why they used to bring this bird.
Chinese eat that.
There's also something which is smaller than that, which is called the turtle dove. You know what that is? That's like, they hang around with the pigeons, but they're smaller. Those like little guys, They're a little bit skinnier, a little bit, the tail is a bit longer. You know what I'm talking about? You see them in the street.
Diamond tail doves.
Right. Those, yeah. So those two species are the ones that are brought in the Bet HaMikdash. Only those two. No other birds are brought. Right. So the question is why those two, right? So you know why? Because this is meant for who? For poor people who can't afford to bring. They don't have like expensive animals. You know how much it costs to go and try to buy today a bull, right? How much does a bull cost? It's a lot of money. You know what I mean? Yeah, what are you kidding me? You gotta pay good cash for that. Right, go buy nice sheep, right? Go buy a ram, these kinds of things. There's a lot of money, these things. You know what I mean? But these things are readily available. You can just go out on the street, catch one, and you bring it. That's it. You know what I mean? So it's very cheap, so a person who's poor, he can't afford to bring, right, a real, expensive sacrifice. So we say, listen, for you, this is the one. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of savings. Poor guy.
What about these places that have, they kill them, they have live kills? to have the places where they kill the.
Okay, very good, but it still costs money. You know what I mean? That's the idea, right? So okay, so Rabbi, what we're talking about is like okay. So Rabbi, what we're talking about is like this. There's also something called a meal offering. You know what that is? That's even cheaper than the bird. What does that consist of? You're bringing flour, basically, right? Flour, right? Wheat flour, barley, right? Things like this. You pour some oil over it and some frankincense, right? The spice, and you bring that as an offering also. So there's several different types according to your physical ability. Yeah, I'm sorry, your financial ability, right? That's the idea. This is the reason why we have these types. So the first classification is called the olah. What is the quality of the olah? All these things can be olah, by the way, the ones that we described now. All of them can be olah. Olah is something, as we said, right, that when it comes to the tzibur, when it comes to community, they bring two a day. These are obligatory. You have to bring every day two a day for the tzibur, for the whole community, to atone for everybody in general. But then you have a private one also that you're not obligated to bring, but you can bring as a donation, as a free will. Like you want to do something good, you want to show Hashem how much you love Him, or you have some sins that you did. You didn't do such good things in your life, whatever. Let's say, for instance, he didn't put on tefillin every day, or I don't know. He ate something which was not kosher, maybe. Something like that, right? Whatever. Things like this. Not minor, but things which are more like daily, kinds of things, day-to-day kinds of things, which a person was not really, on the ball, on par with the performance of the mitzvot. So he wants to bring this to atone for himself. It's called olah, not obligation, but he brings it as his own will, his own free will. Right. The interesting quality of this sacrifice is that it goes all to Hashem. What does that mean? It's burned entirely, the whole body is burned entirely to Hashem. Nothing goes to the Kohanim, nothing goes to the owner, nobody eats that, nothing from there. Who eats it? Only, right, the Mizbeach, it goes into the altar. The altar eats everything. What does that mean? The fire comes and eats everything.
They should feed the people. Why don't they feed the people?
That's the question. So you know what the answer is? The answer is, it's not that he needs it, we need it. You understand? That's all I say. You know what I mean? In other words, the person, the whole psychology, you know what it is behind the sacrifices? The whole psychology is like this. I have to come to the Beit HaMikdash, I have to bring this animal, and watch it being slaughtered, and the blood coming out, and all these, procedures that are being done there. So this is reminding me of what? That it should have been me. I should have been the one they should do this to. Right? So this is coming in my place. You know what I mean? So it's a psychological kind of thing, that where a person is being reminded, this is coming in your place, my friend, So you should know. You're right, exactly. Behave good. You weren't such a good boy. That's the idea.
Yeah, but you got to call Aaron up to do that stuff.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Hey, Aaron.
That's the idea, sure. That's the idea. By the way, there is one thing for the sacrifice that everybody's allowed to do. You know what that means? You know what that is? The slaughter. The slaughter doesn't have to be done by Kohen. It could be done by the owner or by any other, Jew who's around there. That's something else. But when it comes to the slaughter itself, the shechita, it's kosher with anybody. Anybody can do it. Right? That's the idea. It has to be done the right way, obviously. There's a technique. Yeah, of course. It has to be done kosher way. Right? So that's the idea. So these animals, this is the way they're brought. This is called the olah. Then there's something called shlamim. Right? Shlamim is just the opposite of what we just described. Right? What does that mean? That a person brings it, but this one doesn't go just to Hashem. It goes to three different parties. Right? It gets divided up. Some parts go here, some parts go there. What happens? Some parts go on the Mizbeach, on the altar, to get atonement. This is for Hashem. Some parts go to the Kohanim, right? To the Kohanim to eat. They get nice dinner over there, right? Enjoy a nice dinner. And they eat a lot, by the way. When they're working, they get a lot of. You can't imagine how much meat they eat, right? Quantity is very. It's unbelievable. But they say because the sacrifices are so holy, they're totally spiritual. They're not like physical. They're spiritual. I'm sorry? Pigeons are kosher. Yeah, you can have those eggs that they lay. Those little eggs. Cook it or boil it up in your pot, right? And you can have that. Nice egg, pigeon egg. kosher, of course. If the egg is kosher, the animal is also
Yeah, but you
kosher.
have to cut the throat. You don't just snap the neck.
Yeah, you got, yeah, of course, you gotta do shkita properly. Everything.
Do that instead of chickens. If you wanted to do.
Like a roasted pigeon.
I did it other pigeons before.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. They're dirty.
Okay, whatever. Chickens are also dirty. Believe me when I tell you.
Just
Right?
look at the
They're very dirty. We clean them. We clean them up. It's the idea,
Well, what do pigeons feed on, really? How do they survive on?
They eat things on the ground. Like seeds. All kinds of refuse. Like all kinds of junk that's left over. Leftovers. People drop on the floor.
Yeah.
Kinds of things like this.
kosher rice.
All kinds of things like this. They go for anything. You know what I mean? But it's just about anything they can put in there.
Salsa.
So they're not really fed with quality food.
This is not exactly quality food, right? But they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They know.
Bugs. They eat the bugs.
Yeah, sure. They eat bugs. Yeah, sure.
Is it true that shellfish are considered the cockroach of the ocean?
Cockroach of the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an interesting idea. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know exactly what that means.
I mean,
Okay,
everybody's tasting.
so anyway, Rabbi, let's go back to what we said.
I've never tasted shellfish.
No?
So the shlamim
Don't tell him.
is divided up into 3 portions.
Yeah.
Just totally unlike the olah. The person also, there's no obligation to bring that. He brings it from his own free will. He wants to do something good, to want to do mitzvah, to get some atonement, to get some, good. So that's what he does. He brings shlamim. Right? This one goes to 3 parties. We're going to talk, by the way, about which one is superior. Is the olah better, that goes totally to Hashem? Or is the shlamim better, that gets divided up into three parties? Which one is better? And why? Right? What's the reason for that? We'll talk about that.
I would say 3 parties would be better, but at least
Why is that?
because these poor or less fortunate would be getting something to eat.
That's good. I like that. Well, I like your logic. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this, right? We're going to go a little deeper into this whole thing.
Fellow man sometimes.
Okay, very good. But it's not really your fellow man, right? It's you. You're the one who's eating, right? It's not really, it's not your friend. Your friend can eat that. Only you can eat that.
Only the one that slaughters it?
Right, the one who offers it, the Kohanim that offer it, right? They're the ones. Okay, so anyway, getting back to what we said, we have also another category, right, which is called chatat. Chatat is only, it's an obligation. You cannot bring it as a free will offering, as a donation. This is something that you're obligated to do. What does that mean? That if a person did a very big sin, one of the major sins, right? What does that mean? These are the major sins that a person is cut off from the Jewish people. Or is liable to death on stoning, things like this. You know what I mean? Right, things like this. For instance, right, let's say he committed adultery. Let's say, right, he did something with a man. There was something with a man. He done something, instead of going to the woman, he went with a man. You know what I mean? He did something like that, right?
I didn't know those things were happening.
Yeah, the oldest profession, as they say, right?
It started from there.
It's
I
dirty.
thought it started with
Rabbi.
Boy George.
Rabbi,
That's it.
Rabbi is dirty.
So, right, all these things, right, well, no matter what they are. Also, by the way, if a person goes with his wife when she's a nida, also this, is isur karet, gets cut off. If she's a nida, you have to wait till she goes to mikveh. It cannot be like that. You know what I mean? This is not the way it goes.
It'll get cleaned up, baby.
Goys like the blood. I'm sorry.
So, Rabbatai,
Oh, wait.
there's also other sins, right? Let's say a person broke Shabbat, right? Also, same thing over there, right? This is very, very severe. It gets cut off from the Jewish people. So a person has to bring also sacrifice for that as well. We're not talking about the rabbinical things.
Right.
If he did something rabbinical, we're not talking about that. We're talking about he did something from the Torah, one of the 39 labors, right? By the way, let me give you a piece of good advice regarding this, right? Because there's a problem here, regarding Shabbat. Everybody in this generation, people are a little bit lax about this. You know what I mean?
There's been a problem regarding Shabbat ever since then.
Right, but the truth is, if you go back to generations, most of the Jews were keeping Shabbat. It wasn't like this. You know what I mean? The last few generations, we've got a big degradation when it comes to Shabbat. A big problem. You know what I mean? It's become like a free for all. You know what I mean? You want me to give you some good advice about that?
Light candles.
You want to be a kosher Jew. No? Like me and Jimmy, we talked about this, right? We talked about who's kosher to be a witness for a wedding. We talked about who's kosher to do a conversion, to convert somebody to Judaism. We talked about these things. So, we talked about this, but I give a piece of good advice. You want to be a kosher Jew, right? Kosher. I'm going to tell you 2 or 3 things. That's it. If you do these 2 or 3 things, you're kosher Jew. What does that mean? Number one, you don't go to work on Shabbat. You don't go to your job. Number one, right? Don't go to your job. What does that mean? Because if people see you going to work on, that means you're desecrating Shabbat in public, right? Which is no good. That's number one. Take a rest. One day, take a rest. Believe me. And I'll tell you why that person should do that. But I'll explain to you why. But anyway, second thing is give your car a rest, right? Because the car is a big problem. There's a fire in there. You understand? The engine has a fire. So therefore, right? Give your car a rest on Shabbat. Number two, right? So if you do those 2 things, basically, right? That means in public you're not desecrating Shabbat. If you did something in your home, you're still a kosher Jew. Can you imagine? So these 2 things, if you can just do these 2 things, now you are already called a Sabbath observer. More or less, right? Plus, minus. Let me give you also another piece of good advice when it comes to Shabbat, right? Everybody talks about the issue of turning on lights and turning off and these kinds of things, right? And the electricity and the elevator, right? And all these kinds of devices and the telephones. You want to give you some good advice regarding if a person can't control himself, right? He should be able to control himself, but if he can't, and he's playing with the switches, on Shabbat, yeah.
So you're forbidding that?
Right? So what I tell you is like this, right? The best thing to do, if you want a person, if you know somebody like this, right?
Can we work at home?
If you know somebody like this who has a problem with touching with the switches on Shabbat, this going up and down, don't buy him a gift. You want to get him a birthday gift or a holiday gift, right? Whatever.
Big switch.
Get him a very good gift. You know what it is? Go through this whole house and change all his lights to LED, right? LEDs, because there's no fire in the LED. You understand? So therefore, this is a much better option. If a person has LED in his house, he's much more of a kosher Jew. You know what I mean? So that's what I did, by the way. When I there were certain homes that I went into, and they told me to come and see. I said, number one, all the lights have to be changed to LED. That's the number one. Just in case somebody plays around. So there's really it's yeah.
So I could tell somebody, if you buy LED bulbs,
Yeah.
then you could, for Shabbos, you can put them on and off.
We're not going to talk about that now. Right now, this is not the time for that. What I'm saying is right that if a person did it, so we can say right that he hasn't really according to the Torah desecrated Shabbat. That's right. So it will be also, by the way, it saves a lot of money. You're going to notice about a 50% reduction in your electric bill if you change the LED. Yeah, maybe probably more than that. You know better than me. So that's the idea. You know what I mean? So it's a if you want to get out of the Shabbat problem, number one, right, give your car a rest. Number two, don't go to work, right? Number three, change everything to LED, right, in the house, whatever. So then you're almost there, right?
What about the Shabbat dinner that you talked about?
So don't turn on any flames. You know what I mean? That's the idea. You know what I mean? That's the idea.
To eat a dinner.
Right. That's right. That's very important. You're right. We talked about that, but here we're talking about desecration. Desecration of Shabbat. You know what I mean? These are the major desecrations from the Torah that we have. You know what I mean? There's a major problem. So the truth is, it's not really that hard. I mean, give your car a rest. Just rest your car one day. What's the big deal? I mean.
Unless it's God forbid an emergency or something.
Well, that's something else. Yeah, that's a different issue, right? You're talking. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's a life-saving issue. But if a person does that, he's already a kosher Jew. That's it. That's it. Can you imagine? 2, 3 simple things.
It's not that halfway.
Not that hard. You know what I mean? Not that hard. One time, Alav Shalom, your brother Alav Shalom used to tell me a joke about this. Your brother he had some good jokes. So things that he told me like this. He said, you know what? It says, if a person wants to switch to to keeping Shabbat, he wasn't keeping Shabbat all his life. Now he wants to switch. So he says, what should he do? He says, the joke was like this. He said, you know what? He says, when he drives his car, right, on Shabbat, little by little, he says, every week he'll turn off one more light, like he'll disconnect one more light, so it'll be one less light turning on, on the car. little by little, you have to go gradually, They say, by the way, that actually this is actually there's a lot of truth to this. That I don't know if this is true, but they say it in the name of Lubavitcher Rebbe, right? Somebody told me, who was a very smart man, very wise man, They say that one time they came to him and they said, this guy in our neighborhood, the neighborhood they lived in, Crown House, right over there. This guy drives a car on Shabbat, Don't do something for this guy, yell at him, scream at him, curse him, I don't know, do something, So the rabbi told them, okay, bring this guy to me. I want to speak with him. Whatever. So he comes to speak with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He comes gets an appointment with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he tells me, he says, he says, I hear you're driving a car on Shabbat. So he tells me, he says, you know what? He says, do me a favor. I hear that you're coming to shul on Shabbat. He says, you know what? This week, don't park it in front of the shul. Parking like one block off. You know what I mean? A little bit off. It says, so right, exactly, bring it in front.
In front of the high school?
You know what I mean? So he says, next week, 2 bucks off. And like this, gradually, to get him out of it. The point is, right, sometimes the person has to go gradual with these things. You know what I mean? If you try to go too far, in one shot. So, but I want to give you some encouragement, by the way, about this. So I talked about this one time before, but a person has to understand this, right? The truth is that Chazal tell us, right? Shabbat is the source of all blessing. All the blessing comes from Shabbat. All the material blessing as well, and also the spiritual as well. So what does that mean? Whatever you do on Shabbat, that's what you're going to get that week. That week is going to come. It's a result of what you did on Shabbat. You know what I mean? The blessing comes from there. So therefore, what does that mean? That a person who keeps Shabbat, you know what I mean? He doesn't work on Shabbat. Because when you work on Shabbat, what happens is, right, that you're taking the blessing of Shabbat and you're converting it into something mundane. So what happens is, right, that Shabbat, we talked about this before, has a very bad mazal, the day of Shabbat, right? Saturn is the mazal of Shabbat. Saturn, Saturday, Saturn, right? Shabbatai, Shabbat, right? All the languages have the same, also in Hebrew, it comes out like that, right? Why do they call it Saturn? Because it's Saturday. So they say Saturn has a very bad mazal. So what does that mean? The truth is, right, if a person works on Shabbat, you know what happens, right? Instead of gaining money, he loses money. That's what happens, right? Because he gets connected with this bad place over there, where the mazal is very bad on Shabbat. Instead of rising up above the mazal by not working, he goes back into that bad mazal. And what happens is eventually he's going to lose all his money. That's what they say. Can you imagine? He's going to lose everything. Because of that little flame that he's igniting, that bad seed that he's planting on Shabbat. In the end, everything will go haywire. And by the way, the truth is, there are some people who experience this as well. Because they worked on Shabbat, even though they were wealthy, in the end they became poor. There were some people that this happened to.
Can't get any poorer than I am right now.
You know what I mean? So the truth is, right, that if a person keeps Shabbat, he's getting away from this bad mazal of Saturn, which is destruction and death, and everything is bad there, darkness, black. So a person who rises above that. As I told, what did I tell you basically, right? I told you, no car, no work, right, and LED, right, all over the house. That's it. You're already in business. You know what I mean? That's it. Now you're a Sabbath observer. The rest we can take care of later. Gradually.
If the TV is LED, can you watch it?
The TV is a different issue. There's a content over there is a problem. You know what I mean? The content is very bad. This even on weekdays is bad. Doesn't really make a difference. You know what I mean? That's a different story.
Nothing but garbage.
Okay, whatever. So, I just wanted to give you that little pointer, whatever. But a person wants to really get wealthy, right? The source of the wealth is Shabbat. So if you keep Shabbat, all the wealth comes. If a person has good mazal, he's meant to be wealthy. What happens is that when he doesn't keep Shabbat, it steals the wealth from him. That wealth gets stolen. Goes like under the table. That goes into the sewer system. You know what I mean? That's what happens.
I never worked on Saturday in my life, but it still went to the source.
Right, but also driving on Shabbat. You know what I mean? The truth is that driving on Shabbat can be worse than working. You know why? Because a person can work on Shabbat, but he's not lighting any fire.
Right.
But driving on Shabbat is lighting a fire. Which is like heavy duty. So, what I tell people, another thing also what I tell them is that you should know that what I want to say. And we said the right. So driving on Shabbat is the worst thing. Okay, we'll come back to it. I forgot what I was going to say. Whatever. But anyway, getting back to what we said, right, regarding the sacrifices. We have these 3 sacrifices that we mentioned. We have also something called the Todah, right? What is the Todah? Thanksgiving, right? A person gives thanks for certain things that happened to him. Let's say he was sick and he recovered, right? So he brings this korban for recovery of sickness. He was in the hospital, he came out alive, or he got into like a big accident, some plane accident or some car accident and he came out alive, so he's supposed to bring one of these todah, right? It's called, right? These sacrifices. So we also have something called asham, right? Asham is also for a sin, just like hatat. But asham is for different kinds of sins, right? Hatat we enumerated what it's for, more or less, right? For things which are cutting off. Person did. By the way, when we say that a person brings a hatat for sins that are cut off, we're talking about him if he did them b'shogeg, inadvertently. He didn't know what he was doing. He did it by mistake. You know what I mean? But if he knew what he was doing, it doesn't help him. We're talking about a person who doesn't know. What does that mean? He didn't know that it's not allowed to drive a car on Shabbat. He didn't know that this woman that he's living with, right? She's married. He didn't know. She didn't tell him. She told him, "Oh, I'm single." Turns out that she's really married. You know what I mean? So you didn't know what you were doing. So a person like that who didn't know about these things, he didn't know the severity of what he was doing. So then he has to bring a sacrifice. But if he knew what he was doing and he did it anyway, sacrifice cannot help him. It's the sin is too severe. You know what I mean? Can you imagine? It's too severe for that. So when it comes to Asham, by the way, the funny thing is how it is today, right? Today you think you're going with a woman, it could be a man, right? So, right? So that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? I thought she was a woman. It turns out she was a man. I don't know. She was her hair, everything was like a woman. She had, everything. I mean, so that's like a classic example, of this kind of issue, right? You have to bring a khatat for that. I thought she was a woman. She's a man. Right? She turns out to be today, that's the way it is, right? A man looks like a woman looks like a man. You don't even know what they are. You don't know what's going on today, right? So okay, you understand the point, right? So this is the idea. Asham is for different kinds of sins. What does that mean? Asham, there's, for instance, a person who takes an oath, right, and makes a false oath. These kinds of things, right? So Asham is brought for that. Also, it's brought for things which are in doubt. What does that mean? We're not even sure if he did the sin, right? There's a safek. There's a doubt whether he sinned or not. People, he himself doesn't. I'm not sure. He's not
Michael
sure
Cohen?
if he sinned. He's a Cohen.
Jimmy likes my corny jokes. That's why I'm always.
Okay.
What's the big deal? He's going to bring a sacrifice.
He himself became sacrifice, right? So it's going to be saying, that's the problem.
I've never met such a Trumpster rabbi in my life. We got to get you a hat. Oh my God.
Listen, look what he did now. Can you have to bless a person like that, what he did. Yeah, a person like this, you have to give him blessings. That's the only thing you can say. He's helping Israel, he's helping Bibi, he's helping, he's doing this on purpose, you know what I mean? To help him with the elections.
In the prophecy.
2 weeks later, it's going to be elections over there. Yeah. So can you imagine, he's setting him up.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Even when I didn't like Trump in the 80s, when I was younger, he was a big threat. He always was around Jews in New York.
Yeah.
He loves the Jewish people.
Yeah.
He respects them.
That's
he
true.
knows that the brains of remember what he said? He goes, when it comes to counting my money, he goes, I want a guy with a yarmulke counting my money. He goes, I don't want some black guy counting my money. He said that? Yeah, he said that, I swear.
He said that, yeah.
So he respects the Jewish people. His father respected them.
That's the way. He has a tradition in his family like that.
Maybe his father did go to the Ku Klux Klan meeting.
Even though they're Germans, by the way, they're Germans. They're Germans. They're Germans.
His father looked like a pure Ashkenazi. You ever look at him?
Yeah, German guy.
Yeah, like a pure Ashkenazi.
He was an immigrant.
With that hook nose, unbelievable.
God bless him. I can't tell
He
you.
likes the Jewish people.
Hashem will reward him for all these good things that he does.
Most of them don't like him.
I think his
The
son.
morons.
I think his son Baron is going to be president.
Okay.
For him, the others may become president.
He might become mayor or something like that.
Okay, what type? So you got the idea, right? So we have all these types of various offerings that we're bringing into the Beit HaMikdash. So question is like this, right? We can go through, by the way, even more of them, but I don't think there's any reason now to go into all the details about these things. But we have to understand behind, right, this idea of sacrifices. The idea is like this, basically, right? When the sacrifices were intact and were being performed, that means all the sins were being atoned for, and we had a good life because of that. The Beit HaMikdash, when it was built, our life was much better because of this, because the sins were like totally eliminated like that. The system was totally eliminating the sins because everybody was bringing what they had to, right? The whole thing was perfect system, which was making life beautiful. That's the way it was. But so the question is like this, right? What about today when we don't have 2,000 years ago we don't have a sacrifice? We don't have Bet Hamikdash. So what do we do now? Shiur, yes, shiur akshav, yes, shiur. What do we do now, right? What's the idea? What happens now? How do we get atoned for our sins? This question was actually asked by Avraham Avinu, right? When Avraham Avinu came into the covenant with Hashem, and he saw, right, in a prophetic vision, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him a prophetic vision. He saw that the Jews going to exile. There's not going to be any sacrifices there. No Bet HaMikdash, no temple, no nothing. So he asked Kadosh Baruch Hu, he says, what's going to be then? You know? How are my children going to get atonement? What's going to be? Right? How is it going to happen? So Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, he says, very simple. When there's no sacrifices, you know what the Jews do, right? All they have to do is open up the Siddur and read the sections of the sacrifices that are written in the Torah, right? Olah, Chatat, Asham, right? All these things. He reads them. Todah, Korban Todah. That's what we do every day. The Korbanot. When we read Korbanot every day, we come to the Bet HaMidrash, we come to the synagogue. We read this every day, and this is what gives us atonement. The fact that we read them now. Right? That's the atonement. Can you imagine? Now atonement, instead of coming with the animals, comes from our lips by reading these things. When a person reads these sections, it's just like he brought it. Can you imagine? An amazing thing, right? So therefore, it's very, very important. By the way, Sfardim have really an advantage over here. You know why? Because they really read like 3 times a day these things. About the sacrifices, we read in the morning, before Shachrit, and after Shachrit, and again we do it. We read the incense, and then also before Mincha. We do 3 times a day. So this is really, really good thing. Some of the Ashkenazim, by the way, they don't even read 1 time a day. Even one time they don't read. You know, so in that sense, our system is better a little bit. You know, the way our prayers are arranged is much superior in that sense. So we're reading every day these things. So therefore, what happens is that a person reads them. It's like he brought these sacrifices. Can you imagine? So this is considered to be a very big thing. A person has to be careful. And also, when he does the Amidah, right, the standing prayer, it's like he brought the Tamid, the communal prayer, the sacrifice which was brought for everybody. This is in place of those things. So can you imagine our prayers now that we do? That's why it takes us an hour in the morning every day to pray. You know why? Because we're doing all these things. To cover all these, we're covering all the bases. You know what I mean? All the bases are covered. You know? Okay, 30 minutes is also not bad.
But wasn't doing it. That was the Chazal 25 minutes. I did the record.
Kocha was just standing there.
Okay.
No, I remember Kocha would fall asleep standing, and the strap of the tefillin would just fall. You remember? It would fall, Rabbi, it would fall from his arm, and Rabbi Katz would go like this. He would hit him, like with his fist. You have to wake him up.
Okay. So 25 minutes. Okay. So the point is, right, that we have everything covered. By the way, they say that even though all the sacrifices we just mentioned now, there's also many more. We're not going to go into all the details, but they say the most powerful one out of all of them, you know which one it is? The one that's like 100% insurance policy, better than, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, insurance policy. You know what that is? The incense, right? The Ketoret. The incense is the most powerful sacrifice that there is. They used to bring this also, the Bet HaMikdash, the incense. There was a special small altar that was golden altar.
Why did we do all
with incense? Because we don't have Bet HaMikdash. It's not we did it away. Hashem did away with it. So Hashem said, I don't want your Bet HaMikdash because you're.
He gave it to the church.
That's something else. That's a different. That's just for pleasure. That's not. No, it's not Avodah. No, not Avodah.
Rabbi, I don't need to derail you on the tracks, but I know you don't like listening to this. But is it true that when he came, he did it? He said, "This is nonsense. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do that."
Yeah, but the church uses
we don't need to sacrifice.
I don't know about these things. To be honest with you, I'm not a Christian. What can I tell you? So I'm not really involved with this stuff.
That's what they tell me, that he did it.
Okay, well,
either his disciples.
I think he did away with himself. Basically, that's what he did. He didn't do away with anything that we were doing. He did away with himself. That's the problem. He destroyed himself. He destroyed his own soul.
And yet, 2 billion people follow him.
And 2 billion, people are going to gain up with him. They'll be together. Don't worry, they're going to join together. They're going to be one big group.
Are you talking about
burning?
Or in the rapture?
For sure, he's going to be there. Yeah, he's going to be there for sure. No question about it. Right? So anyway, the point is, Rabbi, that this incense, we read it 3 times a day. The Sfardim, Baruch Hashem, it's a very good thing. So this, they say the power of reading also the incense is like you bought it. Can you imagine? Especially a person says it with kavanah. He knows what he's talking about. He's thinking about what he's saying. He knows the words, what they mean. So a person who does that, he says with kavanah, with intention, with the proper concentration, they say it atones for everything. Even the whole surroundings get atoned for. What does that mean? Other people also in his vicinity live in the same neighborhood. Paris Hills, we go park, this area. Can you imagine? One person, yeah. Can you imagine one person who reads the incense with kavanah atones for everybody in his vicinity? So what does that mean? The power of the incense is so strong that all the bad agents, all the bad angels that are appointed to do harm to people, they all get neutralized by that. Once a person reads that, with kavanah, with concentration, he destroys all of them. He wipes them out.
So if I go hang out with them now, the demons, and you read it,
can you imagine?
It'll affect me.
So it's an amazing thing. It saves the whole. So what does that mean? Let's say, for instance,
Does he do this once a week?
let's say, for instance, right? Somebody was supposed to get into a car accident, like down the road there on Grand Central, right, Parkway, Service Road. So this guy was praying, and he said the incense. He saved this guy. Can you imagine? He saved him because of that. So the power of the incense, they say, it's the most powerful offering that there is. It's more powerful than all the prayers that we do, whether it's Amidah, whether it's Korbanot, whether it's all the other things. It beats all of them. So they say that a person has to be very, very careful about it. You know what it is? They say one time before the prayers, the Shachrit and the Korbanot, they say. Then also afterwards, when you finish the Shachrit, the Sfarim, we say it again. We say it one more time.
In that Tefillin prayer in the morning?
I don't know exactly what you mean by Tefillin prayer. No, it's not really a part. That's not something else. It's a different story. We're talking about something else there, right? So, also, before being high, we say it again. So, as it says in Zohar Kadosh, person can't really say it 3 times a day with real full kavanah, with full concentration, because he's not, he's in a hurry, he's got to go somewhere, this and that, whatever. So it says Zohar Kadosh, at least once a day you should say it with full concentration, at least once a day. That's also very good. So when is that? When they say the one you do after Shachrit, when you finish Shachrit, if you can say that one with concentration, this is going to neutralize all the bad agents. You're going to be safe from everything. Can you imagine such a power it has, the incense? So this is the most important thing that we read every day, from the Korbanot, the incense, the Torah. Unbelievable.
Is there a physical incense that they use?
They had it, yeah. Now we don't have it, but it's gonna come back.
With the can or whatever, I don't know, whatever they use.
When
It
is
was,
it coming back?
when the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt, Mashiach,
Oh,
in
understand?
Jerusalem, they're going to build a temple.
you made it sound like next week it's coming.
Maybe next week, you never know. I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not going to live to see it.
Right? Don't be so sure. So anyway, the point is like this, Rabbi.
wall
Even
went
if you don't live to see it, you can read it.
The wall went up.
You have it here, right here. There's no reason to wait. Open it up and learn it, and learn how to read it. Learn how to read it properly, by the way. Not like to read it like with all kinds of, stuttering and mumbling, gibberish. Don't read like gibberish. A person has to learn how to read properly. Hebrew, the proper pronunciation. Not like to pronounce it like some kind of foreigner, some kind of, some guy who, who learned it in a church, something like that, Muslim, something like that. Now, we're not talking about like, you have to know how to really, really read Hebrew. The proper way. You have to have a masorah, you have to know how to read. Once a person knows how to do that, everything he reads, it makes angels, creates powerful angels that protect him. So a person has to be very, very careful how he reads the Hebrew. Can you imagine?
Do you think that when Mueller was investigating Trump, somebody was reading them every night to exonerate the president?
He's got Jared over there. Maybe Jared was doing it. Okay, so whatever, right? So got somebody there. He's got a son-in-law, right? Okay, whatever.
It's incredible how he always comes out on top, better than before. That was the best thing that could have happened.
Because he supports Israel. He loves Israel. He loves God. He loves the Bible. He loves Hashem. That's why.
Chelsea too. She's married to a Jew.
Listen, it's an indefeatable formula. When you support Israel, Hashem supports you also, and that's the way it is.
Rabbi, this is from the beginning. It's
Israel
marry all along, right?
They've done a lot of bad things.
I'm sorry?
Israel has done a lot of bad things.
Don't be an accuser.
To its people.
Don't be an accuser. Don't accuse the Jewish people.
Neighbors.
So they say, right? Okay, don't open the mouth of the Satan, right? So now, right?
Incapable of doing that.
This is the philosophy that I like.
I don't know about all that.
They say, by the way, that a person should never accuse the Jewish people. Say the Jews are sinners. This kind of thing. They're never allowed to do that. You should say that tzaddikim, they're good people, right? They're good, Baruch Hashem. You know why? Because as a community, as a total community, even though there are wicked people amongst the Jews, but as a community, we're also always considered to be tzaddik. You know, this is the idea.
What about the parliament over there?
That's the governance.
There are some good guys over there too.
I
Believe me,
know,
there are some good guys there.
That's the governance different.
Okay, anyway, so getting back to what we said over time, I want to tell you something also amazing, right? We discussed all of this, but nevertheless, they say, with all due respect to all these offerings, there's even one thing which is superior to all these things. Can you imagine? Even on top of all these things we mentioned. What is that? You could guess, right?
Let's get right to the
You know what's in my heart. You know what kind of guy I am, right? You know where I come from, right? The study of Torah is superior to all these things. Can you imagine? A person learns one letter of Torah, one word of Torah, whether it's halakha, or chumash, or gemara, or mishnah, or midrash, right? Everything. All these things, one word of Torah is worth more than all the mitzvot, all the sacrifices. Can you imagine? So Torah study, for us, the Jewish people, it has the highest level of sanctity, purity, atonement, right? Everything, right? Everything is in the Torah. By the way, there's a pasuk that brings this up over there, right? In the Torah. You know what it says, right? It says, this is the Torah of all these sacrifices, right? What does it mean, the Torah of the sacrifices? It means the laws of the sacrifices, right? But the rabbis say, you know, when it says the Torah over here, there's also deeper meaning over there. What does that mean? That when you learn Torah, you don't need any sacrifices. You have no need for sacrifices. You don't need to bring olah, shtamim, chatat, because the Torah atones for you for everything. Can you imagine? The Torah study is above everything else. You don't have to bring animals, no blood, no slaughterers.
That's what we are doing now. Right?
That's what we're doing. I think so. Yeah.
As long as we all
Correct me if I'm wrong.
As long as we all the same
Okay.
name.
Right? You understand? So Torah has the power to atone for everything, more than anything else that there is in the world.
Shalom.
One word of Torah is superior to everything else. Can you imagine?
Shalom.
So, what does that mean? I'll give you an example, by the way, how strong it is. You know how strong it is? The power of the Torah? Just to give you a little example, right? Small example. They say that at night, when a person goes to sleep, you should say Kriyat Shema, right? In order to fight off the bad elements,
you
right?
said that you could lay it sideways in bed.
True, yes, we said that. We talked about that. So a person should say Kriyat Shema before going to bed, and this kills all the bad elements, so he can sleep good without being bothered by anybody, no bad angels coming to him, all kinds of things like this, right? The Kriyat Shema protects him. But they say that a person who's a Talmid Chacham, who's learning Torah at night, he doesn't have to say that. Can you imagine? He doesn't need to. Why? Because the Torah protects him. He doesn't need it.
So what's the big deal to say?
You know why? Because this is superior. You understand?
Oh,
He doesn't need it.
extra-
It's like,
extra-
I'll give you an example, right? It's like a person who's got like a business, he makes $10 million a year, so they tell him, okay, take also another business, you're going to make $100,000 a year, it's like, I don't have time for that. I'm making $10 million a year, give me a break, so I don't have time for that business, So the Torah is above everything. One word of Torah is above everything. Can you imagine? The Torah is superior to everything else. So a person should always, anytime, any free time that he has, should always open up something and read something, Baruch Hashem, we have today translations, we have translations into English, all the books are now translated. We're not talking about those translations of the Goyim, which are inaccurate and distortions. We're talking about the Jews now. The Jews, Art Scroll, we have Judaica Press, right? Feldheim, all these companies that are making Jewish books with Jewish sources. You have to read those, not this nonsense garbage that they print, the Goyim, the garbage that they filth that they print. We're not talking about that. A person has to learn real Torah, right? Not the garbage that comes from them. So a person reads one word of that, right? A couple of minutes. This is better than everything else that there is in the world. Chazak u'baruch. Kam shemadak rotzos.
Oh my God.
Osher bechavod. Gagam lidros. Gagam lidros. Oh.
See, this is what you get when you come to a Bible.
So later. There's time for everything. There's time for everything, right? Okay, try it out. Very good. Enjoy. Make a bracha. Bezonot. So
we're done for tonight, I guess.
right. So you understand what time?
We are. He's there.
The power of the Torah
What is in it?
is greater than all the other things combined.
It's kosher.
No, what's in it though? Meat?
No,
It's cold.
Beans.
Beef?
Beans.
Oh, beef.
I want to tell you also some other interesting thing right about the sacrifices, which is in the Pirkei Avot, in the ethics of the fathers. You know what it says over here in the Pirkei? That the whole system, the Bet HaMikdash, the way it was being offered, the offerings over there, was all miraculous. Everything, there was a lot of miracles going on there in the Beit HaMikdash. Things were not going according to the laws of nature. That whole system was above nature. You know what I mean? It wasn't going according to the laws of nature. So here they just enumerate several things, miracles that were occurring in the Beit HaMikdash. This was like a daily occurrence in the Beit HaMikdash. Whether you're talking about the first one or the second one, doesn't make any difference. Can you imagine? So just to go right and see what that means, let's just go through them, right, and see what this means.
Mark, if you have one of these, when it comes out of the oven, I'm talking about when it's made. Oh my God.
Heaven on earth.
So it says like this, right? Asar nisim nasu lavotenu b'Beit HaMikdash. There were 10 miracles that were done in the Beit HaMikdash on a daily basis, right? 10 miracles that were done, right? Lo ipila isha mereach basar kodesh, right? No woman ever miscarried because of the smell of the meat that was there, coming out from there, because there was a very big stench was coming out from Beit HaMikdash. It was like a massive amount of animals being slaughtered there, Can you imagine? No woman ever miscarried. Okay, this we don't understand so well because we don't understand these things today, but also goes on to say, "V'lo yisriach basar kodesh me'olam." It says the holy meat that was being offered up at the sacrifices never rotted. There was never any rot that happened to any meat in the Beit HaMikdash. No meat ever rotted there. Can you imagine? This was also a miracle.
Yeah, you slaughter, you burn. There's no time to that.
That's also true, but the truth is that sometimes it's not so not like that. Because what happens is that you have to wait. There's a line, right? Exactly. And the sun is like, beaming down there, right? Yeah, it's hard. Israeli sun is very strong. So nevertheless, right, never rotted like that. Look at something amazing, right? There was never a fly seen anywhere in that area, right, where the sacrifices, because the flies like to come and meet, right? You know how it is, right? Especially in Israel, the flies are like, they're very vicious over there. The flies, they're very aggressive. Israeli flies, you know what I mean? Israelis, you know how they are, Israelis. So the flies are also like that. They're also Israelis. Can you imagine? So that's the way it was. But there was never a fly that came in that area. Can you imagine? In the Beit HaMikdash, this was a miracle, a total miracle. This kind of thing, right? So the Kohen Gadol, right, who was coming to Yom Kippur to bring the sacrifices for Yom Kippur. They say, right, that if the Kohen sees a seminal emission, right, he has a seminal emission, so he cannot bring the sacrifices. Can you imagine? So it never happened on Yom Kippur that the Kohen had a seminal emission. Zera, tesli, tesli snachwa, tesli. Arashol esarunachia, Kohens. Why? Because if he would see it, he cannot offer sacrifice. He's not pure. You understand? He has to be pure that day. He can't be with his wife. He can't look at some dirty things, whatever. Right? No newspapers, no stuff like that, right? No internet, all kinds of things like this, right? So they say all these things never happened to the Kohen Gadol. Going on, right? Also another miracle, right? Which was that what? That even though there was rain coming down sometimes during the day and night, the fire that was on the altar was never extinguished by the rain. This was also a miracle. Never got extinguished. Right? Can you imagine? This is also a great miracle. You know what it says, right? That there was a pillar of smoke that used to go up from sacrifices, like to the sky, to the heavens. There was a big smoke coming out, and it was going straight up to the sky.
You want to try warm?
So they say that even though there was winds coming, and trying to to deviate the smoke, to make it like go in a curved fashion, curveball, slider, kinds of things like this. But nevertheless, the winds never moved the column of smoke was going straight up to the sky. It never got diverted. Can you imagine? The wind never diverted the smoke. Always went up straight.
I'll eat the next one.
It's a miracle in itself.
Yes, it's a very big miracle. Yes. Right? So it says all the offerings that were brought over there. Can you imagine? We're talking about the meal offerings that were brought for the community.
Okay.
They never found any disqualification for them to be impure or anything like that. Never happened such a thing like this. So they were always pure. The offerings were always left pure. Right? Another thing, right?
Do you think that it's as pure in the Vatican as it was in the Beit HaMikdash?
Oh God! Go straight to hell, right? So now, what does it say, right? Another thing, amazing, right? Amazing, these amazing miracles.
Boys.
The things to come, 3 times a year, right? For 3 holidays. Now Pesach is coming up, right? Pesach is one of them. Sukkot and Shavuot, right? These 3 holidays, all the Jews had to come to make a pilgrimage to the Beit HaMikdash. Everybody from all over the nation. North, south, west, east, right? Everybody had to come. Can you imagine? Everybody's got to come. The whole nation has to come. But nevertheless, even though there was millions of people there standing there in the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, they never felt like crowded over there. Can you imagine? They never felt like, oh, we're crowded. This is like Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium, crowded. Can't move. Going to these concerts, Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? It was never felt like that. It was always no crowd. That never felt crowded. So not only that, right? They say that they were able to prostrate themselves because there was certain times they had to prostrate, go down, bow down. And each one of them was able to bow down. There was space for each one of them, which was like a miracle. Millions of people in one little courtyard. There was room for everybody. So this was a total miracle. This was one of the miracles that was in the Beit HaMikdash. This was a occurrence that happened every year, every 3 times a year when they used to come to bow down, prostrate over there.
Like Brooklyn. They closed the street off.
When did that happen again?
I don't know. They have this whole thing.
Right? So another thing it says, right, that a snake or a scorpion never bit anybody in Yerushalayim.
Wow.
Because of the sanctity of the Beit HaMikdash. At that time, there was never any snake bites, scorpion bites, never. They were all totally protected over there. Can you imagine?
In Jerusalem.
Right, Jerusalem, because the Beit HaMikdash was there in Jerusalem.
More or 2 more for Rabbi. Sure.
So this is all amazing. You understand? This is all miraculous. We're talking about absolute miracles over here.
Rashi.
I want to tell you something to finish off this lecture. Something amazing that was said in the Zohar Kadosh regarding the sacrifices. They say, by the way, the Zohar Kadosh, it goes deeper into these things, into these concepts. So one of the things that the Zohar tells us is that when you offer sacrifices, it's better that there should be also something for the Satan as well over there. You understand?
Why?
Because Satan also needs his nourishment. That side also needs their nourishment. And when you don't give,
So we have to help them?
so Satan will punish you for that. He has power to punish. Can you imagine? They say that now, right, coming back to what we said, we asked a question right at the beginning. What we asked was like this: which one is superior, right? The Olah, which goes totally to Hashem, or the Shlamim,
What did you do?
which goes
Or the devil?
one part to Hashem, one part goes to the Kohanim, and one part goes to also to the people. So there are parts over there in the Shlamim that go to Satan as well. There are some, refuse there, parts which go to Satan as well. So it says Zohar Kadosh, the Shlamim is superior. Because why? Because there's also parts with Satan there as well. This is better. So it brings a story over there to give you an idea how this works, right? They say that Eov, which was one of the biggest, most interesting characters of the Bible, right? Eov, one of the books is named after him, right? 24 books of the Bible, named after Eov, the book of Eov. So it says over there that Eov used to offer a sacrifice every time that his children, he was a very wealthy man, so his children were spoiled, they're spoiled kids. They used to make a party every day. Can you imagine? Every day make a party. Have a good time. They're dancing, singing. Why not? Your father is rich, right? It's all on him, right? He pays for everything. Why not? Live it up, right? That's the way it is, right? When you got wealthy parents, you can live, you can live it up. So what happened was that Eov, right, being the righteous man that he was very worried about his children. You know why? Because he said, maybe these parties that they make, it gets a little bit dirty over there, a little bit, right, R-rated, or I don't want to talk about X-rated, right? Gets a little bit out of control, these parties.
Are you comparing it to the Georgian weddings in Leonard? Remember when you showed up once when you became religious and I said, Mike, how come you're not dancing? And you said, David, I don't have orgies. Like the rest of them.
Okay, don't bring me to Leonard's now. Okay, don't bring me to Leonard's. Okay, there's some other time for that, right? So what happened was that Eov, because his children used to make a party every day, what he would do was offer a sacrifice to atone for them. Can you imagine? Every day he would bring a sacrifice to atone for his children's sins. Maybe they did some sins over there. He was such a righteous man. Can you imagine? Such a chassid, such a pious person. So they say, but there was one mistake that Eov made, and this is why he got sick, and he got attacked. He was attacked. He lost all his money. He lost his children. Everything was lost. And also, in the end, his body got sick. He was afflicted with all kinds of afflictions, illnesses. So they say, why did this happen to him? So they say this was one of the main reasons why. Can you imagine? Because he used to bring a sacrifice every day to atone for his children, but he used to bring olah, not shlamim. Right? So what does that mean? When you bring olah, it all goes to Hashem. So because of that, the Satan was angry at Yov. Understand? So he used to come and say, you know what? This guy, he doesn't give me anything. He only wants to give to Hashem. I don't get nothing. And this is why he came to accuse Yov. Say he's not so righteous. Let's see how he's going to do if he's going to be afflicted. It says Zohar Kadosh, why did this happen to Yov? Because he didn't want to give anything to Satan. And therefore Satan accused him and attacked him. In the end, right, he afflicted him with all kinds of afflictions. He killed all his children, he took all his wealth, everything. So Zohar Kadosh teaches us something from there, right? You learn from there that a person, should also give something to Satan. Don't think that you can do everything holy, everything, holier than now, right? What does that mean? So they say, right, there's a Shlomo Melech. I'll explain to you what that means. Good question. This is a very good question, right? So you know what it is, right? That what happens is that when a person wants to give everything to Hashem, and nothing wasn't, so Satan attacks him, as we said, right? So Eov is this mistake that he made. So so it says Zohar Kadosh, we learn from there that a person shouldn't be like that. Meaning what? That everything you do, on a general level. I'm not saying you can break the halakha. You can never break the halakha. That's something else. I'm not talking about that. But when it comes to within the halakha, a person has to do some, like a little bit nonsense in his life, a little bit. You know what I mean? A little bit, be a little bit silly sometimes. Crack a joke here and there. You know what it is, right? They say that when one of the rabbis of the Talmud used to start his lecture, the first thing he would do was crack a joke. You know what I mean? To give something to Satan, a little bit, My whole lecture is going to be serious. Everything is going to be serious. David takes care of that for us, right? He takes care of it, right? Yeah. That's what we have over here. So you understand? You have to do something a little bit silly.
You're telling me when I crack jokes before you start the lecture,
yeah,
I'm doing it for Schumer and Blumenthal and all these.
Well, all the guys who are working for Satan. You know what I'm saying? That's the idea. You understand? You have to give something to him also. They say, by the way, that it's an amazing thing. The Zohar Kadosh says something amazing, something really deep about this. It says, right, that when a person has a thought of holiness, right, of Torah, studying Torah, before he starts, he should do something a little bit silly, like say something stupid, crack a joke, something silly. Why? Because that little thing that gets him into the Torah. He's able to get in there because he did something stupid a little bit, not against halakha, but a joke, crack the joke, a little, something like that. You understand? That's the idea. So a person should always give a little bit something, to be a little bit silly sometimes.
Spice it up.
Right, let's spice it up a little bit, But the truth is, the person has to know, right? The whole lecture shouldn't be like that. You understand? The whole lecture shouldn't be to the Satan. But a little bit in the beginning to give to Satan, this is the proper thing to do. Because if you don't give, you want to be always holy, right? The Shlomo Melech, what he said, right? Don't be too overly righteous. You know what I mean? Don't try to think that you're always going to be an angel 24 hours a day. You have to be a little bit silly also sometimes, a little bit, mess around a little bit, you know what I mean? Why not, play around with your children a little bit, play with them, but take their arm, twist them, do some wrestling, this kind of thing, nonsense. Right, just make sure it's not 24 hours a day, you know what I mean? That's the idea. Yeah. So once you're doing it 24 hours a day, you'll be totally into Satan, you know what I mean? That's something else. You understand? 24 hours a day we cannot do.
No, not you. Another Jimmy from Starbucks.
So that's the idea, you understand? A person has to know that there are limitations, but also something he has to give to Satan. So in the sacrifices, that's the way it was, you understand? There was taken into account sacrifices. There were some parts of the sacrifices were going to Satan. Right? And also we had, finish with this, right? That we had on Yom Kippur, one of the goats that they used to offer, right? One was to Hashem, and one was to Satan, as Azazel. This was going totally to Satan. They say, by the way, that when you give something to Satan, what he does is he appreciates it so much that you do this, he blesses you, He himself blesses you. He comes to Hashem and he says, look at this righteous man, He's totally righteous from all sides. Can you imagine? He himself comes and blesses you. That's what they say about Am Yisrael. That when they offered that goat to the Satan, that gets thrown off the cliff, you know what I mean? Yisrael Azazel. The Satan comes and says, I'm so happy that the Jews brought me an offering for me. I also agree that you should bless them. He comes to Hashem and says, I agree with you. Bless them, Atone for their sins. Let them go for everything. Can you imagine? So a person has to know, right, how to do that little spice, put a little bit of spice in his life. Not to break the halacha, chas v'shalom. I'm not talking about that, right? But within the halacha, to do a little bit of silliness, whatever, this is a part of Judaism. Can you imagine? This is also a part.
So basically,
Chazak u'baruch, thanks for coming.
we gave Mueller 2 years.